welcome to my home. Okay, so now you're actually seeing me face to face. It's usually on Slack. So what we want to do is we want to resolve this confusion over genre. And because I understand it's in the frame, that is over here. That is my wheelchair and my electric piano. Okay, and if you can tell me what that is on the wall back there, then you get extra points. Okay, so the issue of genre, here's how I'm going to resolve it, or I'm going to attempt to resolve it. Usually the Dirk article, or at least so far the Dirk article, is the most successful article I've had on genre, because some of the papers written about it get really theoretical, or I should say inaccessible. Okay, because this particular paper for the Dirk, for example, is very theoretical, but it's just written more accessible. Excuse me, there, I'm just fumbling. Than many articles that I've had before. Okay, so I'm going to speak in examples. Okay, but the first thing I want to do is just sort of address what I would consider a good sort of working definition of a genre, and that is a genre is a form of communication that has been created in order to resolve a recurring rhetorical situation in any given discourse community. Okay, so that means there's a community of people, and they're all built around usually a particular interest, particular goals with regard to that interest. Okay, and so as a community, they have certain situations that continue to arise that they need to quickly address, or to address efficiently, or more effectively, in order to sort of move forward, or just to resolve that. And so you can think about some of the communities that you're a part of, because you are. Like when I tell students, tell me about one of your discourse communities, because they're reading like articles that are written by rhetoricians, they're thinking, oh, I'm not really a part of any discourse community. And then I'm like, so you're telling me you have no interests? Right? So a discourse community, and we've talked about communities of practice and discourse communities. Basically, it's just a community of people that have shared and common goals. They are providing each other information and feedback. And it's built around an interest, right? So, or a purpose. So if we talk about the world of, say, a doctor's office, then that's easy for me. Like I can totally, that's a sort of a place I live. So this is what we'll do. I'm going to talk about it in the sort of form of a doctor's office. But then I will, after that, try to expound upon how this works in other communities that aren't as obvious. I don't know. So, or rather ones that, because they're familiar to you, because they are things that you use every day or all the time, even if not every day, you don't necessarily see them as genres. Okay? For example, if I told you a text message is a genre, you might be like, what? Okay, so here we go. Doctor's office. So one of the genres that you confront the first time you walk into a doctor's office, at least in the United States. Okay, so I am, when I'm speaking here, speaking about definitely a U.S. construct. So anyway, so you walk into the doctor's office and you step in and you sign in or whatever, and then they usually hand you I almost feel like calling it like the dreaded patient medical health information form, right? If it's your first time at the office, it's a bit thicker than usual, and it asks you so many things about your background. So, they get your name and your address and your date of birth and all that stuff, but then they also find out, what is your medical history? And then they, what problems have you had before, or what's been great before? What kind of medications are you on? Do your family members have any medical history that might be relevant? Excuse me, are you experiencing any of these symptoms? And it's usually like a full page long where you just like ticker each one that you have or you have not. right? And so what this resolves is that without this form, if I were to go into the doctor's office, the first thing that would happen, I was walk in the door and I would have to just make a beeline straight to the doctor and tell the doctor, but that's not how it works. He or she's got like an entire room or an entire community of people working for a reason. So when I step in, I fill out the form. The receptionist or assistant takes the form and hands it off. Now, to us, when we're sitting in the doctor's office waiting for the doctor, which is, if you think about it, the perfect time to have you fill out this form, because otherwise you'd be taking up their time speaking to someone about all this. But you're not. You're filling out a form. So when you hand the form off, you sit there and you wait until they call your name. And when you go, you'll notice that the person leading you back has a folder in their hand. And inside that folder is the patient medical health form that you filled out when you walked in the door. Okay? That individual, usually a nurse, like steps over and they take your weight, the dreaded taking your weight. And then they go over into the doctor's office, into one of the rooms. They put you in a room and then they take your blood pressure. And that individual collects information that they are sort of specified to collect. And then they add that to the form. Okay? So this is how the genre is now out of your hands and is being used to circulate information that everyone in the office can add to and read, provided they have permission to, but they can add to and they can have discussions on the genre, right? So often, my experience, because I go so often, is there's usually some sort of place on the outside of the door where they put the little folder. And the nurse puts it in the folder and they shut the door and they usually say something like, the doctor will be in just a minute. In 2 hours later, the doctor comes in the office and the doctor will grab the form and they will open it up. And often they will introduce themselves. I'm Dr. So-and-so. And then they will start looking at your form. And so what's not happening, this is what's not happening. You are not repeating all of the information to the doctor. The doctor has already had one person collect information and then the next person add to that. And now it's the doctor's turn to evaluate everything they see. And then they can straight address issues they see already. For instance, you might go in and the doctor, Dr. Jones, decides to say, I noticed that you have a history of cancer in your family, but you haven't had an evaluation for years. I think we need to set that up, right? And that's before you've even gotten to maybe the sinus infection or whatever it is you're there for, right? They could say, all right, we need to address this particular problem that I see. And also, I noticed here you listed these symptoms. And they don't even need to go into your medical history yet. All the doctor has done when they looked at your medical history and they looked at your parents' medical history, etc., is known there is a sort of predisposition toward it, but they don't need to discuss it. That discussion doesn't need to happen. It's on the paper. They can consider it. And so then as you are talking, they are adding information or discussing issues with you, right? So that is one way this has resolved. And then the doctor will add things to this chart, and then they will usually digitize the chart, right? So then you become a file of information that they put other genres in. For example, if they tell you to go get a blood test, look at the blood test form. That is a genre, and that communicates to the people taking the blood test what kinds of things they need to test for. And if you look at it, if I look at it, I might be a little educated because I look at them a lot. When you look at that, it's not made for you, the patient. You're just the sort of person in between if they haven't sent it over digitally, right? And that tells them what to test for in the codes that they understand and in the specificities that they understand. So then you get your blood drawn, right? And then that form, when they get the results, is sent over to your doctor's office. They're able to read the results. And the results, if you've ever seen your test results, I've kind of learned how to read mine. And so they're, I can be a little bit of a problem patient because I saw that, but if they look at they're able to look at the form and they're able to look at the numbers that come back. And it's often numbers and for a little visual where it's like in the green, in the red, right? That's another genre, right? And that's useful between the people who test and the doctor's office. And the doctor's office is trained to read it. Yeah, so that's 2 genres. Can we do more genres? So when the doctor decides, oh, okay, let me look at you, and they decide you have a sinus infection, right? Okay, well, you need an antibiotic and, maybe a cough syrup. And it's possible that the cough syrup you need, hold on, a little bit of a screen thing here. Okay. Gonna have to cut that out. Okay, so now the doctor's office decides that you need an antibiotic and you need a cough syrup. Okay? And that cough syrup might have codeine in it. Okay? So what this requires is a new genre, another genre, not new, but another genre, a prescription. Now, if you've ever actually seen the prescription, and you might not have because things are digitized now. In the old days, they gave us a little slip of paper, and I actually was a pharmacy technician, so I used to have to read those. But they might write it on a pad or they might send it over digitally. Mine send it over digitally now, right? But it is still a genre because it is filled with the doctor's name, usually the doctor's license number, because it has to be on there in order to order medication. So this is kind of legitimizing your request for medication. Otherwise, the rhetorical situation that's being solved by this is that there are laws, right? And so if I were to walk up to the pharmacy and the doctor says, the doctor has told me you need penicillin and codeine, right? I were to walk up, it's awful, I know it's more specific than that, but you walk up to the pharmacy and you're like, hello, I saw Dr. Jones. Dr. Jones said I need penicillin and codeine syrup. And the pharmacist looks at you like, okay, can you prove that? How much of it? How does he want you to take it, right? And so the prescription has the directions, how much, which means they've done something about weight often. They have looked to see what works for you. The doctor has looked to see what works for you on the pad, like if you're allergic to anything, right? So that's all resolved by the prescription that's sent over so that you don't get to the pharmacy and the pharmacist goes, okay, so you need it, why? Okay, so what are you allergic to? Okay, so what have you tried before? Okay, so what else are you on? This might interact, right? So the prescription is sent over after things are considered. So that's 3 genres that I've already discussed about a doctor's office. And it's interesting that, it's interesting to think of because what I think is often done in terms of, or often felt when we are doing this theoretical notion of writing, is that we don't live what we're writing about. Like these things that we're writing about, I mean, aside from your literacy history, may not be apparent that they are living, right? You are living among genres. You are living among the usage of different languages, right? You're living among them. Like they're around you and you are using them constantly in your own communities. But because the process itself, as you've created one or that you come across them, seems somewhat natural after the first or second time you've come across it, you stop questioning it, or you stop worrying about it, or you stop thinking about it because it's so natural, right? So when somebody points out to you, hey, a Reddit post is a genre, you kind of go blink, blink, but I engage in that all the time. That's not theoretical. That's totally normal. And I'm like, yeah, the entire purpose of discussing genres is because we have observed that they exist. We did not create the concept and then ask the world to create genres. Instead, we noticed that this particular thing happens. You know, communities of practice and discourse communities create forms of communication in order to resolve recurring rhetorical situations. See, that sentence right there was the more it sounds a little theoretical. But after I just explained it in like more plain or more sort of experiential language, it might make better sense to say a genre is a form of communication, right? Like the patient mental health form that is used to resolve a recurring rhetorical situation, which would be the constant need to go in and give your history and all of your information and tell everybody how you feel in the doctor's office. You only have to say it on the sheet and then discuss it with the doctor. And so, so it resolves, it just removes a bunch of confusion or conversations. And also, they've got documentation of everything you said, and then you don't have to repeat certain things, right? And then also the prescription resolves the situation of needing proof. It would be nice if we didn't need proof sometimes. I think over the past couple of years, most people would love to be able to just walk up to the pharmacy and say, "Can I please have some Xanax?" But that's not how it works, right? Because it is a controlled substance. So those are just like, say, 3 genres with the doctor's office. So you might say to yourself, well, I don't go to the doctor's office as much as you, doc. So, like, can you give me an example that's from my life? And I'm like, well, I want you to give me one from yours. And that means that look at your, look at your life and like look at the communities that you're a part of, right? So let's say, and I'm going to say this from past experience. Let's say you're a gamer. I used to be a gamer, and I'll tell you why I'm not anymore someday if you want to know. Okay, but years ago, I used to play World of Warcraft. Yep. I was a pretty heavy gamer. So what I wanted to do is you're in the game, and you're having a moment where you're like, I don't understand how this particular thing works, or you want to complain about a particular thing in the game, or you're looking for people to join your guild and you don't want to be like running through and have them asking you to join, okay? If you've never played World of Warcraft, right now you're having a moment like, what is she talking about? If you have played an RPG or World of Warcraft, then you know what I'm talking about. So basically, World of Warcraft, for example, that game, we needed a place, or people that played the game wanted a place to go where they could discuss it. Right? They could discuss the game. But 4chan, it's funny because 4chan has been considered just like a place for a very long time. I began teaching 20 years ago. And when I was at Florida State in 2001, when I first started teaching, the line still was, the first rule of 4chan is that you don't talk about 4chan. So anyway, get off 4chan and we're going to come over here on this new site called Reddit, right? And Reddit was where conversations are happening. I mean, if you look at Reddit, that is what is happening. That is what it is built around. It is built around conversations. And you can get really specific on there because by now this thing's like a hulk of a monster. I mean, it was saying, it says front page of the internet for a reason, right? So, for instance, I had taking it to Reddit, right? Taking it digitally. And this is where we're getting away from something that seems very concrete, like the form, to digital. And I think digital sort of genres confuse people sometimes. Let's see. Okay, so what we needed was a place to talk about games. So you go to Reddit and it was like R gaming, right? And you're in there and you're like, everybody's talking about different games. And you're like, just trying to talk to the people about World of Warcraft because you have specific grievances or whatever. And so then somebody decided, I'm going to go ahead, and they started a subreddit specifically on World of Warcraft. And so you get off R gaming and you're over on our World of Warcraft, right? In the subreddit, the World of Warcraft subreddit, there is a specific way people are talking to each other, certain language. There are expectations for a post. Now, here's where we get into the idea of needing to know what genres work for which communities in order to speak to them. Because imagine this. Okay, I'm an academic, right? One of the things that I have written is a dissertation. And so lots of heavy research, research papers, and one of my methods of argumentation with my colleagues is through research papers, much like the Dirk article we are discussing, right? So that's that community though. If I want to go talk to my gamers, I do not type up a research paper and then hand it over, right? Imagine. My gamer friends would be like, not only would they think my language is like, why are you writing like this? Instead they'd be like, they'd say, Doc, I'm not reading that, TLDR, and I'd say, okay. And so what I would need to do is to recalibrate not only my thinking, but I need to, my thinking about the subject or the language, but also the way I'm going to write it on a Reddit post, because a Reddit post is only so long, right? So that's a constraint of a Reddit post. And a Reddit post is kind of a form because is a genre because there are expectations regarding it. And then on that genre is a little thing that can be life and death. And that is called an upvote or a downvote, right? It sucks when you put something in that gets downvoted. But anyway, that is the way that the community says, that works or that doesn't, and moves something to the top because the community has decided that it is more important or more of value or a better statement than something else. So you see, they've used a form of a Reddit post in order to communicate with each other a grievance or whatever that is about World of Warcraft they want to discuss, resolve a recurring issue of having a place to discuss this that is beyond just your guild or just your group of people, for those who don't play, like just your group of people you play with, right? So basically, Reddit resolved an issue of a need for a proper place to have conversation. Whether or not Reddit is still proper, it's entirely up to you to evaluate, okay? It has become a bit of a monster. So, but I mean that in terms of size. I'm not evaluating, but God bless Aaron Swartz. But anyway, so that's how genre works over there. And like the point here is that you would not, like I said, you would not write a research paper to a gamer. So if I was going to ask you, for example, if we're having a conversation about World of Warcraft and I make a point and then I think that I want to say this to other gamers that I'm not sitting in the room with, right? I need to go tell other gamers, and because internet, I can talk to people internationally. So I pop in there and I need to tell them, but I'm not going to tell them. And the conversation I just had with my academic friend where I was analyzing like some sort of socio-political issue that is representation in gaming, right? I'm not going to talk like that when I go over into the community. I'm going to be like, guys, why do they always have women that wear like, barely any armor? It's an old argument, but anyway, I would go over and I would say something like that. And I would put it more conversationally. But if I really wanted to make a point, I might even reference some past games, and maybe my post is a paragraph. But you wouldn't do in-text citations. That's a research paper. Research paper is a genre. You see what I mean? But you're on a Reddit post. There's a certain recurring situation they are resolving that they do not need 5 different sources from you unless you get in a big fight and they ask for it, right? So another example of a genre, there's like a Reddit post, and I'm just sort of giving you a way, one way that things work concretely, and then the second way may be something that you're a little bit more familiar with than the doctor's office form. So what I'm asking you to do is to look around you, consider the kinds of communities of practice and discourse communities that you engage with or that you are interested in engaging with, and look at the genres that they use. Now, when you go to that community, right, the IMRAD section of this, like paper that I took out, was a very structured, regimented, directive way in order of looking at communities and then discerning what their genres are, right? It is totally possible to arrive at great conclusions about genres in communities at the level we need to here by doing a more observational, or what we call ethnographic sort of approach. Instead of doing writing or three little IMRAD research papers that work it out, when your paper 3 isn't that long, right? They just want you to be very precise, or I would have wanted you to just be very precise about your genres. But you can find out the genres that communities use by going and observing. And so if your questions are, Duck, do I need to speak to the people in that community? I say not necessarily, because if you can find that community on the internet, for example, if you can find them somewhere, whether they have, maybe you're talking about healthcare, right? So you want to speak to a group of doctors, and you look for the organization. Do they have a website? And when you go to that website, you're like, do they have a newsletter, or how are they talking to each other, right? So I hope that helps about genre. I hope that helps. It's just the form of communication that is used to resolve recurring situations. Okay? So if after this talk you are still confused, not sure what to do, if after this you are still not sure exactly what genre is, it's okay. We will work it out, and I will give you that feedback in the paper. And I already know going into paper 3 that you had trouble with the concept of genre. Okay? I saw the Dirk responses. I was very gracious on the grading because honestly, I understood what was happening. And so if you felt that you didn't write that very well, or if I responded by saying something like, I don't know what this sentence means, that is not a personal failing of yours, okay? This is communication, and that's actually because I'm already at a long video that I'm going to have to cut down. I can't go into what I want to call the idea gap. Ira Glass has his concept of taste gap, which I suggest you go and look at, but I will talk about idea gap. And that's, what does it mean when you're trying to write about a theoretical concept that you're just grasping, and then you're trying to communicate the way you feel about that particular theoretical concept to somebody else, right? Layer upon layer of language constraints, right? So that's another thing. So I hope this helped. So anyway, let me know if it didn't. Or let me know what you need clarified, okay? Take care.